Hello, this is international football commentator Derek Ray of the EAFC video game and the Bundesliga. You're listening to the SFF Podcast World Cup Special, the home of World Cup 26 banter.
Grouped. Again. Like a Thanos meme, it was inevitable. In a group with two of the top 10 teams in the world at a World Cup where it ultimately proved you more or less needed 4 points to progress, we were all but out when the draw was made and just didn't realise it. Well, unless we did a Senegal and pumped the pot 14-5-0 and didn't lose heavily to anyone else, of course. The third place ranking was tough. Iran went home with 3 draws, South Korea went home with 3 points and a -1 goal difference. In our time, Scotland will look forward to what the future holds under whomever our new manager is, because no sooner had Croatia and Ghana confirmed their elimination, Steve Clarke had announced he was stepping down after 7 years and 3 tournament qualifications out of 4. It is the end of an era. In more ways than one. Hello, and welcome to the Scottish Football Forums podcast, Season 15, Episode 54. This, our 816th episode overall, is also our last. After 15 years, the SFF Podcast is calling it a day. To paraphrase Jay-Z, after this there shall be no more, so for one last time, let's make some noise. I'm your host Krys, and helping me make that noise is writer for the famous Tartan Army magazine and fellow stalwart of the last 15 years, John. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. It's been a bit of a strange last few days. First of all, Scotland getting out of tournament, which should have came as no surprise to anyone, but the realisation that this is the last podcast ever, unless somebody comes in and forms a new SFF code, the SFF, but we won't go into there. But no, looking forward to this. It's been a great 10 years on this podcast. Let's end in a high.
Indeed. And also joining me is a man who's had more media appearances lately than Nigel Farage, which was probably a funnier description before Nigel started hiding, so he didn't have to talk about a certain £5 million. Thankfully, our man is now back home safely from the other side of Atlantic. It's Daris. How are you doing now you're back?
Yeah, not too bad. Absolutely amazing time in America, despite, a lot of highs, some lows, but absolutely, delighted to be back. I'm looking forward to talking about the World Cup.
Oh yeah, let's start there then, Daris. We'll talk about your experience over there. You were over for all 3 games?
Yeah, I was there for all the group stage games. Flew out on actually left Glasgow on the 9th and came back just there on Saturday. I was meant to actually come back on Friday and then had issues getting home, so we'll get into that as well. It was overall what an experience. Absolutely brilliant to be at the games and met so many amazing people along the way.
I'd imagine the highlight was the first game though.
Yeah. First World Cup game ever for me. Our generation and first World Cup win since Italia '90. So yeah, absolutely. What a feeling. In the stadium for a World Cup game then, and then to win that as well. We're hoping to kick on from there, but. Yeah.
How did you fill your time between the games?
So, I flew out on the 10th to Boston, but I actually stayed in Providence, which is about 1 hour in the train south from Boston. A lot of the Tartan Army guys were staying in Providence as well. There was live bands on as well. There was parties, festivals. I would say in Providence there was probably at least 20,000 Tartan Army members. There was loads on during the day. The community of Rhode Island put a lot on for the Scotland supporters. The G Bar, with the Tartan Army in the park celebrations as well, which was absolutely fantastic. So big shout out to Providence and Rhode Island. They were absolutely brilliant with the Tartan Army guys, from the local people to the Rhode Island police, and everybody there was absolutely fantastic.
Did you head into Boston at all, or were you just out in Providence sort of thing?
Yeah, so I headed into Boston on the Friday, so the day before the Haiti game, and then I headed back up on the Sunday. I was going to go up to the baseball on the Sunday because it was the Red Sox Tartan Army party. I ended up not going to the baseball on the Sunday. I just went to the fan zone, watched a couple of the matches, which was really, really good as well. I thought the Boston fan zone was superb. I was there for the Netherlands versus Japan game, which was probably in the group stage one of the games of the tournament. It was good to watch. So yeah, overall great experience, meeting everybody from different cultures and different backgrounds, and Yeah, so I was in Boston a couple of times, and then I went down to New York in between the Haiti and the Morocco game as well, which was a great experience in itself. I must say, it's New York is so busy. It was my first time there, and I think I read into it. It's 4 times the population the size of Scotland, so it is a big place. 20 million people compared to us having what 5, but amazing city. I was at the baseball as well. I was at the New York Yankees game. I went to the Statue of Liberty. I've done, the World Trade Center. So New York was brilliant as well. Providence was amazing. Looking after the Tartan Army guys in Boston was, brilliant to see all the traffic cones getting put up around Providence and Boston. That was a good highlight as well. So yeah, the locals certainly loved that.
I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but I think we've actually increased the number of traffic cones on things around our own place as well. I've seen a lot more out lately. It's just it's gone from that one statue in Glasgow to just everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, how was the weather? It was obviously that was one of the fears, was it was going to be roasting over there, even in the Boston game.
Yeah. Boston, the weather every day. I think it was hitting 30. High 20s, low 30s in Boston. It was just, weather was absolutely amazing. There was maybe one day out of the whole time it was like cloudy or raining, but most of the time it was sunshine every day. You didn't, you weren't even needing jackets or anything. The weather was fantastic. Normally Boston, I was like 3 weeks before the tournament, it was like 15, 16 degrees, and then it goes up to 27, then it goes back down to 12, and you're like, hold on a minute, what's the weather going to be like? And then when we were out there, it was absolutely amazing. The weather was fantastic in Boston and Providence. But the heat in Florida is something else. I would, when I went down for the last game, that is just, I think I must have walked a good bit of the Fort Lauderdale beach, and I'm like, it's warm. It's the humidity. Yeah. So
I've been over a few times for holidays. It's never this time of year, right enough. So, but it's something else over there.
Daris, you look as though you've started pale blue because you're now white and you've been out in 30-degree heat.
I know. Oh.
I was saying to somebody else the other day that you notice the difference in Florida, especially because of the humidity. Because I've been to Vegas once as well, a couple of times actually, and it's technically warmer in Vegas than it is in Florida. Anytime I've been, you don't notice it as much because it's a dry heat in Vegas versus that humidity that you get in Florida. So yeah, it would certainly been a difficult thing for the Scottish team to adapt to when we played that final game. Just before we come on to that though, Daris, how was the atmospheres between the two games in Boston? Obviously we won one and we lost one. So
I think before the Haiti game, like obviously we got 2 great results in the friendly build-ups. We scored 8 goals, and I thought, hold on a minute, we're playing some good stuff here. Going into these in this World Cup, we've scored 8 goals and we're playing some good stuff. And I thought, right, Haiti in the first game, let's get 3 points, but obviously we needed to do more than 1-0. And then I thought, we got the win, but it just seemed a bit flat. I thought after full time, I thought we felt a bit disappointed. We were happy, yeah, we got the win. A lot of us were still happy. I was buzzing that it was our first World Cup win since Italia '90. But we were like, yes, happy days. We've got 3 points, but it was just at times we looked a bit like vulnerable again. Haiti had chances, I think, the first game, and then second game Morocco. Going into that game, I was actually fearing that more than the Brazil game, but the Morocco game, we'd only lost 1-0, but yeah, we didn't create much, I don't think, as well in that game, and it was just, but because we'd only lost 1-0, it gives us that bit of hope, saying, right, our goal difference is all right, we've got 3 points on the board, we're looking at other groups and saying, right, yeah, and then the Brazil game, it could have been an absolute mauling.
Yeah. I know my feeling was, like, after the first game, it was a case of, okay, we've got the win. Mm-hmm. I'll wait and see whether that's going to be enough. And then after the second game, there was that feeling of, I know I was fearing Morocco, but the way we ended that game, we looked as if we might have got something we'd started just a little bit earlier. And it was a worry of, well, maybe that was the one we were going to get the 4th point that we needed. And then, obviously, we got to Miami. You got down to Miami as well. And it just all went wrong. I'll bring John in now. We spoke on this podcast previously about wanting pretty much the team that Steve Clarke picked, and yet it seemed to be the worst result of the lot. What went wrong?
Scott McKenna tried to play it for the back, is what went wrong. Tried to dribble past the Brazilian. I don't know who told him that one. But yeah, you're right. It was the team pretty much that we were all looking for. What I feared all week, and I kept saying to many people, was I don't want there being a situation where we're 5 minutes to go, we're 1-0 down, we're holding out for a 1-0 defeat. Because had we done that, that would have put us out anyway, the way things transpired. Because the only team through with 3 points was Senegal, with a +2 goal difference. Every other team had 4. But it's hard to pinpoint exactly one thing that went wrong, because the whole thing just, as soon as we went on the pitch, I wonder if it was just a case of stage fright, being caught between trying to be creative and actually doing the sensible thing, where Scott McKenna should be playing up the pitch. The second goal, Andy Robertson had given him some dog's abuse for trying to play it for the back in that area, and then he does the same thing. He should have been belting that ball 50, 60 yards up the pitch. And we just don't do the basics after that. And we should have been 2 down before that, because Jack Hendry is not filled. He gets away with it. We were praising Jack Hendry for his performances in the tournament, but then he had a shocker. Mm-hmm. Second half, we played a wee bit better. We started creating a couple of chances. The key moment for me is McTominay, that one straight after half-time. If he heads at either side of Alisson, has got a better chance of scoring. He heads it straight at him. I think he should be scoring personally, the kind of player he is. And from that moment, you just knew we were never getting back in the game. And, it was good night after the third goal. But and then there was obviously, you're 3-0 down, and you wait till 80 minutes to make a substitution. And then the substitute does make Brendan Ryan Christie for Gannon Doak. Why is Christie being used as a winger when he's not been used as a winger or attack midfield for his club for 2.5 years? But hey, I'm sure we're getting that, but yeah, just depressing.
Yeah, Daris, as John says, we get caught out by McKenna for the first goal, Andy Robertson for a second goal, and in between it was Jack Hendry with the one that VR let him off with. Do you think it was Steve Clarke's decision to make them play out for the back, and they've just not managed to do it?
Yeah, we looked a bit like that, and I think we're playing a bit like that against Morocco as well. It's as if try and play it from the back, and try and work out from there, get the players dragged in. But I don't think, compared to when we're playing Morocco and teams like Brazil, we've not got the quality to do that and play it from the back. You're playing against guys like Brazil. We've got like Vinny Jr. Guys like Neymar came on as well. You've Cunha, the boy at Man United. I mean, these guys are playing at top clubs. Big European powerhouses. But it's the way we conceded the goals against Brazil was terrible. I mean, as you said, like Hendry got away with it. I was when I seen it, I was surprised it went to VAR and they said no goal. I thought, nah, Hendry's not strong enough there. He gets caught out, and I thought the goal should have stood. But there's a couple of times that we've been like that, it just doesn't work. When we try and play out from the back. I would say, I don't know about you guys, but I thought McTominay again. I mean, the Euros, I thought he was a bit flat, but I thought the World Cup, he was awful. I think it was terrible. The only maybe pass mark in midfield that you could say was all right was Ferguson. I thought McGinn was poor as well. And I'm a bit annoyed at Clarke. When you bring up Tyler Fletcher, now, because this could be his first appearance, bring him on for even a minute or two, and then he's a full-on Scotland international player. Think about what's going to go forward. We've got the Nations League campaign later on in the year. We've got the Euro qualifying next year. Tyler Fletcher's young. Tie him down as a Scotland internationalist. He did not feature 1 minute at all. And that was another annoying point for me as well. For why call up the guy and then not even get him a minute, even if the game's done, So
it would have made sense to put him on the 92nd minute with 4 minutes injury time left, rather than shoving on Finlay Curtis and Che Adams, because what are they going to do in 4 minutes? It was just pointless. Finlay Curtis should have won 80 minutes, or in fact a lot sooner. The only sub we'd made before then was at half time, which was enforced because Andy Robertson's injured and Kieran Tierney comes on. But Steve, this was another thing that annoyed me with some of Clark's comments at the week after the game. He said these players have done well to last 90 minutes and that. You forced 10 outfield players, 9 outfield players to play 80 minutes before you've made a change. And then, it just beggared belief. And he was talking about it being a squad game, but the substitutions were so predictable. And this is why people get annoyed. And listen, I think Steve Clark's been amazing for Scotland, getting us to these tournaments, from Krys and I's perspective, the best Scotland time since the 90s, as we were lucky enough to live through it. For you, Daris, the best Scotland times ever. But when you've set those expectations, you want to go to a major tournament and do something and show that you've learned. And I just don't think Steve Clark did.
Mm. Yeah, as I said, he's qualified us with 3 of the last 4 major tournaments. He's brought me some of the, happiest memories in football. Never mind, if it's club or, international. He's brought me so many great memories from the Norway game, Spain, Denmark, Serbia, when we qualified for the Euro 2020. So I'd say Clark, what he's transformed when you look at when he first came in, look at what Hampden was like before. We were getting crowds of 15, 20,000 in the Nations League. We were playing games at Pittodrie, Easter Road, to now getting a Hampden rocking again, getting, which were over 30,000 members now in the Tartan Army Supporter Club. So, but yeah, it comes to tournaments, you want to learn. And I think with the players that we've got at our disposal, McTominay been absolutely sensational at Napoli. For Robertson, who's a Champions League winner by Liverpool, he's a Premier League winner, and we've got guys that can Lewis Ferguson's playing at a good level in Bologna, and it's I don't know if is it just the tactics the way he sets up again. It's just you look at it and you're like, 3 tournaments we've scored 1 goal. No, we scored 1 goal against Switzerland in the Euros. And then 1 goal against Germany in that Euros. So we scored 2 goals in the Euros, and then the goal at the World Cup there against Haiti. But I just think is it just the players' fear on the big stage? When you look at games before it, the World Cup, I know, albeit it was friendlies against Curaçao and Bolivia. No disrespect to them, but we were scoring goals. We looked more fluid, and it was how can you go from that to that? But yeah, obviously the news of Clark, am I shocked after that? I think his comments after the Brazil game, he kind of had a feeling something was brewing on to say, yeah, he's out. And I think whatever, I don't know about you guys, whatever route you think we should go down, whether it's another Scottish manager or we go down the foreign route. I've heard Postecoglou's name being mentioned. We've heard, people saying John McGlynn. Don't know. We've had David Moyes. Would he leave Everton? But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting who takes over, and we need to, buckle up the tactics. But I think it's the frustrating thing with us as well, is McGinn, McTominay, all these guys are in their peak of their career. Do you know what I mean? And you're going to say 2-4 years down the line, are these guys still going to be in the national team?
Yeah, I think we'll come back onto the future of the Scottish national side in a little bit.
Yeah.
But John, as I said in the intro, we played the teams that are 6th and 7th in the FIFA World Rankings in this group. But did it look like it, or did we make it too easy for them?
Yeah, the FIFA rankings have always been a bit flawed, and this is the only group that turned out there was 2 teams in the top 10 with it, and of course we were put in that group. Just you can say typical Scottish luck, but having watched Brazil against Japan on the day that we're recording, you wouldn't have said that they were a top 10 side. I think Brazil still have quality within it, as Daris has touched on. You talk about Vinny Jr. still one of the best players around, and he's scored 4 goals so far. Cunha's been very good for Manchester United recently. But aside from that, there's not the superstar appeal of yesteryear. And Morocco, they played well in the first half against Brazil, and against us, once they scored, I think it was almost too, as if they were comfortable for the rest of the game. They had a couple other chances, and but for Angus Gunn, it could have been even more. But they don't look as though they're going to be a team that does what they did in 2022. I actually think Netherlands will beat them because Netherlands have looked very good. Although that game will be played by the time this goes out, so my words could be beaten already. But I mean, let's not kid ourselves. We were put in a tough group, but we didn't make it easy for ourselves. I mean, you got to remember this is a squad that beat Spain in 2023. Still the last competitive defeat Spain have had to date.
In the major tournament.
Yeah. Aye, exactly.
I believe they were beaten once in qualifying.
What?
Spain, weren't they?
No, Scotland were the last team to beat Spain in a competitive game.
Oh, we were. Oh, okay, right, got you now.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, so we were the last team to beat Spain in a competitive game. Although they lost the Nations League final, but that was a penalty shout. Yeah, which isn't the same thing. So you saw what we did against Denmark. So we can play at a better level than what we showed. But I don't know if we were too cautious. I mean, Daris mentions McTominay's quite right to mention McTominay, but I think McTominay was used deeper than what he should have been, especially the first game. Like, I think we were called for 4-4-2 because it worked against Bolivia, but I thought, no, all due respect, Bolivia are not a particularly good side. And maybe with hindsight, what we should have done was, just stick with the one up front and have McTominay bombing on. But hindsight's a wonderful thing done, is I'm blessed with it.
Yeah, I think there was high hopes for the likes of McTominay and McGinn and Robertson and obviously Shankland came in with form as well, and they certainly looked pretty good in it when we played two up front. But Daris, do you think the players that we had in the squad maybe just didn't step up what we hoped they would?
Yeah, as I said, I expected a lot better from McTominay and McGinn. Players that can, as I said, I think I touched on it previously before the World Cup. We should have guys that can come up with big moments, and there was nothing at all. I thought when you look at some of the other countries that went through, like Cape Verde have went into every group game just going for it, just no matter what. They're a country that've got a small population, and they're in the knockout stages. They've been actually one of the most entertaining teams to watch. Just how small the country is, and how I think they've got Argentina, but they're just happy they're in the knockouts. But yeah, I'm just not brave enough. I think from Clark, I think we're a bit too stubborn. Again, I think it's just we've not got that bravery. That when we were on the ball, it was as if just play it safe, play it to the next pass. It's just safe. We didn't take enough risks. I think we expected guys like McTominay or McGinn to kind of get the ball, zip it through, and try and be a bit bit more braver when on the ball. And there was none of that in any of the games at all.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it also doesn't help that our best ball retainer, Billy Gilmore, was missing. Yeah. Injured in that Curacao game. He was a massive miss, more of a miss than I think some people credited him for.
Yeah, I agree with it. Yep.
Yeah, the point I was going to make was while we were having that disappointing game against Brazil, Haiti were giving Morocco a game. Would you have rather we went out in that kind of gung-ho kind of style? I mean, Haiti still lost, but they had a couple of great moments in that game.
Yeah, I would say so. I'd say I'd rather we were a bit more braver. Just one goal, and I think after coming out of that Brazil game, even we had still just after we were done with a 48% chance. But when you've only scored one goal, and the goal it was a deflection, But yeah, I think we kind of knew. Yeah, no, it's not enough.
I think the big difference in terms of Haiti's expectations compared to us is Haiti are a nation that don't even play in their own country. Just now, their managers never set foot in Haiti because of the issues they've got just now. Haiti are also the second lowest ranked team in the tournament, just ahead of New Zealand. So they could play with that bit of freedom because the pressure was completely off them. They were expected to get 3 spankings, and that didn't quite happen. Whereas Scotland, because of what we've been doing the last few years, because we're a football daft country, the expectation was to try and make a bit of history and get through the next stages. So there was more pressure on us. And we've got players playing at top level, likes of McTominay, likes of Robertson, likes of McGinn, who's a Europa League winner. But maybe within that, some of the deficiencies within the squad were there as well. I mean, the JD performance skill's been great in producing all these nice midfielders for us, but they've forgotten about goalkeeper, defender and striker, and we kind of need them at a high level.
Yeah, and from a Scottish perspective, obviously, you mentioned New Zealand there as one of the lower ranked teams. I mean, they get 3 goals, all from a certain Elijah Just of Motherwell. Mm-hmm. He's now the top scorer that plays in the Scottish League, joint with Henrik Larsson at World Cups ever. That's quite a start.
Really?
Yeah, apparently 3 is the most. My head was on 2 going into tonight, but obviously now won't be making 3. Okay, we will now go over to some of our voice notes, which we've got from a few of our contributors, Grant, Stephen, Laurie and Josh.
You're listening to the SFF Podcast World Cup Special, the home of World Cup 26 banter.
Hi SFF listeners, I hope you're all well. First of all, a very sad day for the podcast that it is coming to end. It's brought myself, and I'm sure many others, some great moments of joy, happiness, friendships, and a lot of crack over recent years. I want to wish everyone all the best who has listened to the show, been a part of the show, and just connected with it over the last wee while. So I want to start off with that. Let's just have a chat about Scotland 0, Brazil 3. Let's be honest, it was an absolute disaster. A terrible way for Scotland to go out of the World Cup, and a particularly awful way to go out of the competition and to lose this particular match. You can't legislate for the mistakes we made in this match. Scott McKenna with a quite extraordinary moment of, just an absolute disaster. A moment of madness to cough up possession, which allowed Vinny Jr. to score one of the easiest World Cup goals ever scored against Scotland. And then we were very lucky in many respects to not be 2-0 down before we were, with Jack Hendry almost committing a very similar offence and only being saved by the fact that he was given a reprieve by VAR, which, I'll be honest, I thought was very, very soft. The second goal is, for me, just summing up the performance in the tournament of Andy Robertson. A tough tournament for the Scotland captain. A lapse in concentration, a good cross, but for me, Angus Gunn maybe showing as well why he has not played football at a high level or played regular football for much of the campaign. And Junior, one of the smallest players on the pitch, is at the back post to head into the net. I don't think we ever really recovered from losing those 2 goals, particularly the first one, but the second one really did knock the stuffing out of us. We did play better in the second half, but unfortunately, you're 2-0 down, and it soon becomes 3 when, brilliant play, sees them get the third goal, which is very well finished by Matthias Cunha. A sorry way and a sad way for Scotland to go out of the World Cup. I actually think this is worse than France 98, because in France 98, we knew we had to win the game, and even if we did win the game, it probably wasn't going to be enough. But in this game, we just needed a point. I know it's pretty simple in all things considered because you're just playing Brazil, but we just needed a point. And for me to not offer enough in either of the 2 games against Morocco and Brazil is really disappointing. To not have a shot on target in the Morocco match is extremely disappointing. I just didn't think we looked like scoring against the Brazil team, who I don't really think are that brilliant. And I don't think really we really know actually how good they are. Because, in my ultimate opinion, we didn't test them enough. How deep will they go in the tournament? I'm not sure. I personally don't think they get beyond the quarterfinals, personally. But who knows? They could win the tournament and make me look like a real idiot. My final words are on the story about Steve Clarke stepping down as Scotland manager. I think it's the right time and the right decision from Clarke and Scotland to move forward. There's no doubt that Steve Clarke has done a sensational job in getting Scotland to 3 out of the last 4 major tournaments. When we've been there, however, we have not delivered, and ultimately, I think we have found our level. We still have a long, long way to go, and ultimately, I think Clarke is at the end of the cycle with a range of these players. Going forward, I think Scotland need to go in a fresh direction. I think they need to go for youth over experience, and I think they need to go for someone who's going to add a bit of excitement to the international game again. I think the next manager who needs to come in needs to have faith in young players and not be scared to play them in big matches. I think we need to go away from the safe, experienced manager that people always talk about. I don't necessarily think that safe and experienced is the right way for Scotland to go. I think Scotland need to be braver and courageous. And I think with a young, exciting manager, I think that prospect could be very, very high indeed. Anyway, a sad way for the tournament to end, a sad way for Scotland to go home. But we did, like Delamitri, come home too soon. All the very best to everybody. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of the World Cup if you do indeed watch it. And to my SFF friends, colleagues, pals, and everybody associated, all the best. And let's keep in touch.
So, on the Brazil game, I think it was always going to be the toughest of the three fixtures that we had in the group. And when we didn't get the point against Morocco, I felt the worst. Because I thought, because of kind of the way the Morocco game panned out, we were going to try and be more expansive and playing the ball. And I think it played into Brazil's hands. I think if you look at what Brazil did, they just allowed their two centre-backs to have the ball and triggered their press on their midfield and killed us at points. And even although two of their goals come from terrible comical errors from our point of view, by the way, they almost had another goal that came from an error that was chopped off. I think that the game just played right into their hands, and they could have had a 4, 5 or 6 if they wanted. It was the poorest out of the 3 games for us, and obviously on the back of that, there was a lot of questions on Steve Clarke and how he's performed at tournaments as Scotland manager, and I don't think that he helped himself with his comments before the tournament saying that we're going to see a different Scotland, because we absolutely did not see a different Scotland at this tournament. We've seen the same toothless, almost scared, kind of a tentative performances from the boys. Now, bear in mind, I know we're playing 2 of the top 10 in the world, but have we not been, as Steve Clarke not spoke about, getting us to a point where we can compete in these games and kind of be brave and look to go and win? I didn't feel like we were going to get anything from the games. Maybe Morocco second half, we should have had a penalty. But I still believe it papers over chasms. I think even if you look at it, I think Hazel Stewart, I think she did a post on X and summed it up brilliantly that the alarm bells for Scotland were there. Even in qualifying, I mean, how often do Denmark fail to beat Belarus at home and give us that chance? And Greece, I thought, battered us at points in qualifying, and probably with a better team in this. So definitely questions but that were right to be asked, and I feel like it's the right time for Steve to go, with us having a new set of players coming through and on the transition period. We definitely need a new approach. I thank him for everything that he's done as Scotland manager. He's been the greatest in my lifetime, but I think things need a freshness, and I think that time's come for the Scotland squad.
Let's put the Brazil game to one side for a second. Let's put this entire campaign to the side for 1 second. Let's even put the previous 2 Euros campaigns aside for a second. Steve Clarke has turned the Scotland national team into qualification experts, which, before he arrived in 2019, is something we can only dream of. Granted, as a big Commander fan, as you all know, I maybe come at things from a different perspective as a self-confessed Clarkeologist. Steve Clarke is someone who has given me many of my favourite footballing memories, both as a Commander fan and following a national team, be it getting Kelly into Europe, that day where he said, "Bye bye Rangers, To be fair, he referenced it again in the open letter, with Bye Bye Scotland. And then, of course, with the many nights at Hampden that we spent making memories. Denmark, Spain, even Georgia in the rain, and various others. So many nights that stick out and live long in the memory. And even one for me, Republic of Ireland at Home, where I had my first ever article published way back when I was a HND journalism student. There's so many memories from the Steve Clarke tenure that just stick out. And that's another small one, maybe a personal one. But we all have our own personal stories. And speaking of personal stories, there was one time where a much younger and potentially even chubbier version of me met Steve Clarke very briefly at a Kilmarnock Football Club function. And I had a rather cheesy Christmas jumper on, which in part I regret, but I actually don't, because the one word that Steve Clarke ever really, or few words that he ever exchanged with me was that he liked my Christmas jumper. And that has always stuck with me. And I think Steve Clarke gets misunderstood because he has the kind of dour nature or dour kind of demeanour. A lot of it is misunderstood dry humour. If you ever ask people who have worked with him or spent time with him, look at how, for example, he has interacted with Gary Dicker, who works for Charlotte FC whilst on the trip stateside. He is, of course, a man who he inherited at Kelly and was captain for him a lot of time. And he's someone who's stuck up for Steve Clarke all the way. But now, let's go back to the bigger picture. He has failed at tournaments. I don't deny that. We got what we saw, the 0-0 win against England. We couldn't get a result against Czech Republic or Croatia. In Germany, well, we got humped, to use Clarke's word, in the opening game. I was there, so I remember that well. Even that, though, was a memory, to be fair. And then the other two games, we just flattered to deceive. And then the World Cup, just gone. It felt like an opportunity missed. The game in isolation, the results aren't awful. The game that really mattered was match day 1. If we scored another 2 goals against Haiti, that was maybe the opportunity to correct history. That was maybe it. But because Clarke is naturally a defensive coach, leaning on the well-known tactics of the special one, because you see them, you even see them in his interview handling technique. You know, it's just one of those where it's not in Clarke's nature to be like that. If only it was what might have been. However, Sir Steve, I think I can call you that again now. You banned us from it many years ago. Thank you.
So Steve Clarke, he came in at a point when we were absolutely rubbish. And the stadium at Hampden was half empty, most home games. So I think when we look back at his time, I think it's really important to remember how rubbish it was following Scotland before Steve Clarke. And what he's done over the past 7 years is he's completely transformed that. Absolutely everybody is completely fixated with the national team now. You know, there's a passion for following Scotland now that really didn't exist before Steve Clarke. You know, primary schools, older people who are maybe not into football. Everyone is really passionate about following Scotland because he's got us to consistently qualify for tournaments, get massive results over the years. Spain at home, Norway away, Denmark at home, that Israel 3-2 game, Georgia in the rain, obviously the Denmark game. Huge results. And as I've said all along, one of the things that he's completely transformed as well is our ability to beat the teams that we're expected to beat. And that's what happened at the World Cup. We beat Haiti, 1-0. And if it was a situation, it's okay looking back on it in hindsight now. Yeah, we should have got more goals in that game. But let's say that was a group game, for example, in a qualifying campaign. Goal difference doesn't really matter that much. Points matter. And we won that game. we were undone when we played two teams that are far better than us, and individual errors, albeit Steve Clarke has to take a lot of the flack for the lack of creativity in an attacking sense. Ultimately, probably the best time for him to go. But for me, that doesn't change anything over the past 7 years. He has been phenomenal. He has been the best Scotland manager of my life, and he'll be sadly missed. What comes next? I don't know, because we really, there's no obvious candidate now. And sometimes the devil, we'll find out in time. We'll know in time if getting rid of Steve Clarke was the right decision. I think it probably was the right time for him to move on. But whether or not we'll all regret that, we'll come to see.
You're listening to the SFF Podcast World Cup Special, the home of World Cup 26 banter.
Okay, so there's a few people there touching on the Steve Clarke announcement. Obviously, we touched on it ourselves earlier. We are now looking for a new manager, but we can reflect over the last 7 years under Steve Clarke. I'll come to you, Daris. We've kind of touched on it already, but tell us what your favourite moments are of the Steve Clarke era.
Favourite moments of Steve Clarke era. There's been so many. I could say from when he started out. He's that night in Belgrade, qualified for the Euro 2020 during the COVID year. It was our first even tournament since 1998. Never mind if it was Euros or World Cup. From the night in Belgrade to beating Norway away with 2 late goals. We've beaten Spain at home. Giving them a game away in that campaign as well. We were unlucky over in Seville as well. He's obviously the famous one being the Denmark one, the way to qualify for a World Cup is just nothing I think will ever beat that. I think it will still be tough. And then there's been and they got us just, yes, I know it was only 1-0 against Haiti, but we've still got us a first win at the World Cup since 1990. We've been to World Cups in 98 and we didn't, the 98 World Cup we didn't even get a win. So he's brought us some really, really good moments. He's, got Scotland from crowds of 15, 20,000 at Hampden to a full house, and he's transformed a lot of the players as well, so that from when he was first in charge. So there's been a lot of praise, I think, for me for Clarke, and he's done a terrific job.
Yeah, I know from one of my favourite ones was probably the Israel game, because that was not only a terrific late winner, but it was that was the game we came back after COVID, really. I know we'd kind of played before that, but there was a full house in Hampden that night. It was an absolutely brilliant atmosphere. John, I'm sure you've probably got one that's stick out in your memory for personal reasons.
Yeah, without doubt, the victory over Spain. Not only was it an accomplished performance against the top-ranked side, where we won 2-0, and it was a comfortable 2-0 and they deserved 2-0. But also that night, my son Callum, who was 8 at the time, got to be a mascot, got to walk out with the team, specifically Grant Hanley at night. So Grant Hanley played well, that's probably why. But no, I'm only kidding. Grant's been all right for Scotland in years. But no, that was just like the perfect night. You couldn't have scripted it better from our point of view. My son being a mascot, my wife was obviously there. She was motivated to go because Callum was the mascot, and 1-2. It was just a great family night out.
Fantastic. I mean, I was in the crowd myself that night, and my son was with me, and one of my favourite memories from the last few years is seeing him bouncing up and down after that one. So he loved it just as much. Yeah, for myself, I would say the fact that we've been back at tournaments has been great. It's okay, it has been disappointing when we've been there, but the fact we've been there at all after so long was such a massive thing. It would have been. It's a shame that we didn't really get people in for the Euro 2020 because of the COVID restrictions. But I mean, we spoke at length on this podcast a couple of years ago for all the chat in Germany and what an atmosphere that was, and then obviously the Bostonians will be talking of us for years to come as well. Maybe not so much Miami, but certainly Boston seemed to take us to heart. So that's been great. The next question then is, what next? Who do we get in? Daris, thoughts?
All right. It's gonna be an interesting one now. Obviously, we know Clarke's away now. who do we go for in the next one? I would say, I think now with a lot of the players aging, we've got do we go to a manager who's going to invest in the youth? I would say, I don't know, but I think going down the foreign route could be an option. We've not done that, but since I think was it Bertie Vogts was the last one, and that didn't turn out to be good. It's risky going with a foreign manager. It's a huge risk. Obviously we're seeing more international countries do it. Ireland are doing it with Hallgrimsson. It came from Iceland. England, I've got Thomas Tuchel, a German manager, in charge of England, which is, yeah. But I would say, could get a good coach in, and a good manager. The one that's sticking out at mind to me could be Ange Postecoglou. Mixed emotions, I think. If it is him, he's done fantastic with Celtic, but at Tottenham, done not great in the Premier League, but won the Europa League. But then he was at Forest and an absolute disaster. So mixed emotions. If it's Ange, I think from someone that knows Scotland and knows the country really well, Davy Moyes is a good option. But can we get him from Everton? He's on he'll be on a good amount of money at Everton. You've got the other name that could stick out at mine's John McGlynn, but is he going to? It's a big step up from Falkirk to Scotland. It's a massive, massive jump. It's not, so. I would have said my personal pick before my personal pick would have been McInnes, but obviously he's now at Rangers. So yeah, I would still like to keep a Scottish background. I wouldn't be against going the foreign route. Davy Moyes would be my pick, but I don't know if it would be him or not. I don't know if we can, get him in.
John, so Daris mentioned John McGlynn there. Steve Clarke did step up from Kilmarnock immediately into the Scotland job. Do you think John McGlynn could do something similar?
I think John McGlynn, he's done well at Falkirk, but I think he's got a level. Remember, he wasn't particularly good at Hearts. So what I will caveat that was a Hearts side that was about to go in administration, to be fair to him. And I hadn't had transfer embargoes at that point, but I don't think he'd be right for the Scotland job. I get what people are saying. The only two Scottish candidates I would have took would have been Moyes and McInnes, but they're obviously involved in club jobs. McInnes just taking Rangers, and Moyes is in the small matter of 5 or 6 million a year, so it's going to take a lot of compensation. I don't see Ange taking it, but I think we should ask the question. Start high, come down, see what you get. Don't just rule it out right away. I don't know if the ITV pundits asked ITV presenter asked Ange if he wanted the job, but I didn't see the whole coverage. So
I know Duncan Ferguson was kind of touting his way for it yesterday. No?
Yeah, I don't think that'll happen somehow. But there was a name that Barry Anderson from the Edinburgh News, who's contributed to the Hampden Roar a couple of times. He mentioned the Danish man's name, the old Danish manager from who took him to SFF 2021, Kasper Hjulmand. He's just recently left Leverkusen now. Would he want to go back into international management? Possibly, that could be. Slaven Bilic was named as well. We know he's. I mean, you're going to get these random ones thrown in. Like someone threw. He also threw in Dragan Stojkovic. That's a blast of the past. I remember Walter Zenga was getting touted for every job under the sun. I'm not averse to a foreign manager, to be honest, because we can't just say Bertie Vogts is crap, so that all Scottish managers are crap. That mentality cost us Lars Lagerback and got us Craig Levein. But it's got to be the right candidate. I have a feeling, though, we are going to do what the English FA did with Lee Carsley and bring in someone interim just now, and I think that'll be Stephen Naismith for the Nations League. I personally wouldn't, because there's enough time between now and when the Nations League starts, because that starts at the end of September rather than the beginning. I just have that feeling that's what the SFA might do, but we'll wait and see.
I wouldn't be surprised, but I hope you're wrong about that. And I totally agree with Daris and John, both of you. We have to ask Ange the question. I don't think we'll get the answer we want, but we have to ask it. Sorry, Daris, you were going.
Yeah, you've got Finley's name. I was going to say another name that could be mentioned in the list. You've got Alex Neil. I think he's at Millwall, isn't he? I've seen his name floating about. That could be another option. I wouldn't be against going Alex Neil. He's done well, but is he going to? Can he get the players, from because I think the Nations League campaign as well, you'll see a lot more of. Yeah, I think you'll see a big change as well. You'll get some changes in the squad. You'll get some younger guys coming through. I was obviously annoyed that Tyler Fletcher didn't even come on, because if Tyler Fletcher comes on for even a minute at the end of the games and he's a full-on international player, you'd probably see him in the Nations League campaign. But I think, yeah, you've got Alex Neil. It could be another option as well. What would you think about that, guys? Would Alex Neil be an alright option?
I think Alex Neil is decent at English Championship level. He took Norwich up in his first spell. It was his first job there, but then struggled to fall in the Premier League in the following season. He went to Preston, got them in the playoffs first season, but then it really faltered for him. Stoke was a disaster. Well, he got Sunderland up from League One, and then for some reason he left them to go to Stoke. That was a big mistake, because Stoke is a poisonous Chelsea club. I mean, they've gone through so many managers over the last few years, it's ridiculous. But he's rebuilt himself at Millwall, done very well. I think Alex Neil is good at a club where he doesn't have the same expectation on him. Could he handle the Scotland job? I wouldn't be totally against him coming. I've just got my doubts on him. As I say, the only two Scots I would take would be Moyes and McGuinness, and even they come with risk. Any manager comes with risk, let's be honest.
Yeah, I think we could always take a leaf out of the Celtic book and pick up a pundit that was working with TopSport, got that board at the moment, and maybe former Aberdeen manager Mark McGee. That one's purely for the WhatsApp group, guys.
At least you didn't go silly and suggest Neil Warnock to the end of the season.
That'd be some laugh, though, wouldn't it?
Or John Hughes.
A former interviewee on this podcast itself, and I'm sure we'll come on to that later as well. One other thing the question's going to be is, what changes do we make to the squad? Because we will probably find there are a few players that are now pushing on a bit. I would imagine Craig Gordon has played his last game for Scotland now, finally. Is there anybody else, though, John?
I mean, we don't want to be ageist, but I can't see Ken McLean going on to the next Euros at the age of 37. I can't see Grant Hanley at the level he's at just now, because he's not been great for Hibs either, and he'll be 35 coming the next Euros. So they're two. I don't think they're the type of guys that would say, we're just going to step aside. I think the decision's got to be made for them, and probably should be. I don't think there should be any room for sentiment. I mean, Kenny McLean's given us some great moments, and I thought deserved to start against Brazil, but we've got to think about the future now. I think Craig Gordon's played his last game in football, let's be honest. I hope to see someone like Luke Graham from Dundee. Hopefully he gets a move to a bigger club. No disrespect to Dundee, but he's ready for a move to another level. And if he can progress, that's another one to come in the squads to challenge the centre-back positions, because let's be honest, that's an issue. We need some of our better players to start getting games elsewhere, i.e. Nathan Patterson. Go get out of Everton. Stop holding out for David Moyes. He's not playing you anymore. He gave you 1 minute between February and the World Cup, so just get yourself out of there. Anthony Ralston, if you want to stick around, I know you're happy being the Celtic supporter boy, but just if you want to keep yourself in the Scotland squad, I think you need to get games. But yeah, as I say, I think Lyndon Dykes another one that's done his time. He's done well for us again, but he's not playing at a great level now. He's not a regular in the Championship. There are other Scottish striking options that we can hold on, but we need more coming through. It's good that Finlay Curtis has went back to Rangers, having got regular games at Kilmarnock, and you just got to hope from that point of view he hits the ground running under a new manager. But we need more coming through. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, you would hope up front we're going to see more of the likes of James Wilson and Tommy Conway and Kieran Bowie coming through, because they are the younger men that have been in and around the squad compared with the kind of 29, 30-year-olds that we've just mentioned. Daris, anybody you'd like to see coming in?
I think it could be, a good opportunity for Mulligan, Josh Mulligan. I think you could see him. Striker options as well. You've got James Wilson, Rory Wilson's at. I'm reading into that because I was looking at players earlier on. He's at Sturm Graz. He's scoring in the youth league as well. I think he's only 20, 21. So you could see maybe Rory Wilson maybe coming in. You could see maybe Josh Mulligan. I think Curtis now will get more, because he's now been in the setup Curtis a couple of times. I think we'll see a lot more of Finlay Curtis. He's had a good season at Kilmarnock. I think now he'll be, I think he's back at Rangers, isn't he? So you'll get more game time with Rangers as well. So, and under McInnes, I think he'll do really, really well at Rangers. Curtis, under McInnes, I think he could bring the best out of him. So I think I would like to see. I think there'll be more of Curtis. I think Rory Wilson from Sturm Graz could be an option. We've got Josh Mulligan that's coming through. He's done well. I think you'll see a lot more of him because the midfield's aging as well. So I think there's going to be a transition of players as well that you'll see a few changes in the Nations League. I think we'll start to notice a couple of changes.
Seeing the subject of Rory Wilson, Daris, he is an example of too many of our players being hoovered up by the English club's academy systems. He went to Aston Villa really young and he scored a lot of goals in EPL too, but he's not had a competitive game for Aston Villa and they sent him on loan to Sturm Graz. He's at an age now at 20. He's only played 4 times for Sturm Graz, I may add. He's at his age, he should be looking to get first team football somewhere. Yeah. Even if he has to drop down to English Championship or come back up to Scottish Premiership and start finding some form, and then who knows, he could work his way back up again. And this is something that a lot of our teams need to do better with in terms. Yes, I get that Brexit doesn't help. Thanks, David Cameron. But I think we need to start playing our youngsters more. I mean, there's an example is Fletcher Boyd at Aberdeen. So we gave him a couple of minutes at the end of the 23-24 season, and he actually played more minutes there than he did the following season under Jimmy Tulleen, even though he should have been more established. And he just went to Aston Villa. I think, well, I'm getting 5 times more of the salary than what I'm getting at Aberdeen to play the same type of football. So that needs to change as well. But yeah, I'm on my high horse now, so I'll just stop.
You've got Fingme coming through. You could Fingme from Kilmarnock could be another one like Curtis. Fingme Wilson, David Watson. He could be an alright option as well. But I think there'll be a couple of changes. I think we'll see. You touched on as well, John, Luke Graham as well. Still really young. If you can get a good move and have a good start to the season, I think you could see him in the squad as well. So yeah, I think there'll be a few tweaks, and when the next time, the new manager, whoever that may be, I think there'll be a couple of tweaks to the team with a lot of adjustments.
Going into the left back soon as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because we've got Andy Robertson's the wrong side of 30. We've got Kieran Tierney who's the wrong side of a good hamstring up there. So yeah.
Doig.
Yeah, Doig seems to be the obvious one. Was it one cap he's got? I think.
Yeah, I think he was it was the only time he played. I think was Liechtenstein last year. Because we made a few changes for that game. Because Doohan was in goal in that game as well. Ross Doohan.
So he was.
Aye.
I just say I'm getting back to squad. Not being well, I guess he's second choice keeper at Celtic currently, but who knows what will happen in the transfer window. Okay, we will see what comes of Scotland in the coming weeks and months. Whether it's Stephen Naismith, who's temporarily in charge for the Nations League, and see how he gets on. Wouldn't surprise me if that's what happens. Or if we do push the boat out and actually have some ambition. We shall see. But unfortunately, the World Cup does go on without us, as we touched on earlier. There's already been 2 rounds of 32 games, with Canada getting through late on, and Brazil doing likewise tonight. There are other games tonight as well. But anybody, any highlights from the group stages, Daris?
In terms of games that I've watched, I thought the Netherlands-Japan game was one of the good group stage games. I thought France-Norway was a great game as well. I caught a bit of that at Detroit Airport in Malabar. Crazy route home, so I ended up watching a lot of the World Cup games that day in the airport. So that was a good game as well, France-Norway. But there has been some good group games, but there's been some ones that's like, it's not been great, is it? So. Yeah, I would say if I was to put my money who wins it, I would go France. I think France, they've looked good. Yeah, so That'd be my pick.
Yeah, I tipped France before the tournament, and my predictions haven't really changed. I think I had Norway winning the group rather than France, but when I recalculated it after the 32 was worked out, it just had France and Norway swapped round, so I've got the same four in the semis. John, what's been your highlight so far?
Well, there's been quite a few. I mean, I enjoyed the Netherlands and Japan game in the first round of fixtures. I think you've got to look at Cape Verde coming through with 3 draws and 3 credible performances. Congo getting the point off Portugal and then eventual qualifying. I thought was terrific, and it'd be good if they could continue that for obvious reasons. What I think possibly the favourite game has turned out to be Algeria-Austria. Now, people were saying, was this going to be what's going to happen with this? Because obviously in 1982, Austria and West Germany carved up to put Algeria out. Would Algeria be part of the same carve up? Now, to be fair to Algeria, they tried their best to get revenge because they were 3-2 up getting into 96th minute, and Austria scored in the very last minute, which proved critical from their point of view because it took them through. So, that was a crazy game. France have been the most impressive team to watch. I don't think Spain have got going yet, but I'm still holding on to my hat that I think they're the team to beat to do it, so I'm still backing Spain to win it. I think Yamal's still hit his best form as well.
Spain looked like a team who went out to try and just get through the group stages, realised they were going to make a mess of it after the first game. It just blew both things away in the second game, and then didn't really need to try too hard in the third game after that. So they are kind of just, they're motoring along nicely, and if they can get, Yamin Lamal fit, I can never say his name.
Yeah.
Then they can probably push on. If they're one of my 4 for the semi-finals, so. I think that's a possibility. I think they beat France in the semi now, if they get that far, the two of them. So that'd be interesting. I mean, like you touched on the Democratic Republic of Congo, Cape Verde. These are the interesting stories of the World Cup so far. It was really interesting that, like I mentioned earlier about Iran, have been really unlucky because they finished third with 3 draws and went home, which any other World Cup would have got them through. Cape Verde also finished with 3 draws, but because they finished second, they went through. So I really feel bad for Iran because obviously they've had all the other stuff on top of it. Just the host nation was not accommodating whatsoever there. And so it's unfortunate for them. But yeah.
One of the host nations wasn't
yes.
Mexico allowed them to train there.
Yes, I mean, one of the 3 home nations. Like 2 of the 3 host nations have actually been really good with their who they let in and who they don't let in. I believe a certain party wasn't allowed into Canada, but mysteriously appeared for the USA games.
Funny that.
Yeah. Okay, so any predictions that have changed since then? Like I said, I've always went with France. You're going with Spain still, John. Daris, you're going with France previously as well.
Yeah. I think France have, they can up it a couple of gears as well. They've won it before. They've got, players that have, that have, been at Mbappe's won it before. There's players that know that winning mentality at France. Holland have looked really good. Netherlands have looked really, really good as well. Watched a few of their games. They've looked good. I watched that Brazil Japan game when at the time of recording, being it today. Brazil have not, but the Brazil it's been the same. Spain I think could still get going. Germany, albeit they won 7-1. I don't know. They've been. I don't know if they've got that kind of enough in them to get really far. Do you know what I mean? They were in. They left it late against Ivory Coast, and then Ecuador they didn't really need to win because they went through with that 7-1 victory over Curacao, which I felt really, really sorry for Curacao because they got themselves 1-1 in that game, and then it was as if Germany have just been absolutely raging and then scored, a good few goals. But I think France, for me, are going to... I said Spain at the start. I thought Spain at the start. I still think Spain will go really, really far. France, I think, have been, one of the more impressive teams. Netherlands have been really impressive as well. But as you touched on as well, and I think in a World Cup, you don't want to peak too early as well. So it'll be interesting how the knockouts will go for sure.
Well, hopefully England have done that because England looked really good against Croatia, especially in that second half, and they have been woeful since. Anybody else been disappointing, John?
Well, I must say, I echo Daris' sentiments about the Netherlands because I had Japan winning that group. I wrote Netherlands off completely in terms of doing something, but they've actually been really good. That Sweden game, they were excellent. I think Broby was obviously very good and with his 2 goals, and Gakpo's come to play, and I think Somerville's looked very very impressive. So he'll be at West Ham for much longer if those continue. Other disappointments. I think Germany will be disappointing if they continue Neuer. I think Neuer's done. He's been one of the best keepers ever, but you can tell in that Ecuador game that he's done. I think Uruguay have got to be one of the biggest disappointments for their reputation to finish third in their group with only 2 draws. And you could tell, speaking about goalkeepers who are past it, Muslera had an absolute shocker of a tournament. It's his fault for the 2 goals against Cape Verde. He makes a worse mistake against Spain. It was that bad that he actually gets subbed at half-time. When do you ever see a goalkeeper get subbed if they're not injured?
Yeah, that was a shocker, that one. Yeah, definitely. Host nations. I think Canada are maybe coming towards the end of their tournament, but I'm interested to see how the USA get on the knockouts. They've looked pretty good in the group stage so far. I know Turkey beat them in that last game, but that was like a close thing, and that's like the Americans had changed their team mostly. I mean, it was funny that Trusty got a goal in the 3rd minute. That was his 2nd shot on target. Daris, what do you think of the host nations? How are they getting on?
Yeah, I've watched a few of the USA games, and I think they looked really, really good, especially in the opening game against Paraguay. I know it was Paraguay and won 4-1, but they've looked good under Pochettino. I think they could be possibly a surprise package in this tournament out of the host nations. I think they've played some good stuff. USA, have got, Pulisic as well being the main man, but they've got. I think with it being a host nation as well, they'll be. I think USA have been really, really good. Their kit is a bit wacky, but I would say what's the red and white sweets that you get? Oh, I can't mind the name of them. It's
Hamanakis.
Candy stripes.
It's like the. I said that when I was over there to somebody as well. Like the USA kit, it's like the red and white sweeties that you get. I can't mind the name of it, but I'd say out the host countries, USA have been really impressive to watch so far. Whether or not when they come up against a tougher nation, how Pochettino does. But yeah, I think USA, out of the 3 countries, they've been impressive so far. Canada, watched their game against South Africa yesterday, a bit flat. They got through, but I think, as I said, I think they'll come to the end soon. Mexico, we don't know about Mexico as well, you know what I mean? I think, but out of the 3 host countries, I think USA for me have been, really good as well. I think they were good against Australia as well. I think did they beat Australia? Can't remember.
Beat them 2-0. It was quite comfortable.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So USA for me have been good to watch.
Mexico's going to have a tough one against Ecuador, I think. Ecuador, when they turned up against Germany, looked good.
Yeah,
and that's the team that finished 2nd in the South American qualifying finally arrived. So it'll be interesting to see how that game goes. John, we have lots of the big players have all turned up, including Ronaldo, actually, and won it in the 2nd game, which was good to see.
Yeah, in the 2nd game.
Yeah, we've had a few World Cups previously where the big names haven't turned up, but they all seem to be here at the moment, which is great.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Messi's obviously hit his hat-trick and has got another 3 goals since. Missed a penalty at the bargain as well, becoming the record goal scorer in World Cup history. I still think that's incredible. That was it, 13 goals since in the last 2 tournaments. It's incredible.
Since turning 35 as well.
Yeah. Mbappe's obviously got 3 goals, and he's now been matched by 4 goals he's got in Dembele. Then comes up with a hat trick. First half hat trick at a World Cup since USA '94 by a certain Oleg Salenko. Ended up playing for Rangers. Incredible stat that. Haaland's been very good in the games that he's played. I've liked the boy Elise from France. He's the one that's really impressed me. Mbappe's obviously taking the glory, but at least a lot goes through him. I think he's been terrific. Harry Kane's been good as well, must say. He's popped up with a few goals, and his link-up play's been excellent. You can tell what going to a team like Bayern Munich's done for him. And that's what you want to see. Yes, you want to see the shocks and like Curacao getting the moment of scoring a goal, Cape Verde getting through. It would be nice if we gone through, obviously, but the World Cup is where you want to showcase the best players, and they all seem to be turning up, and long may it continue. And I echo Daris' sentiments that USA have been a joy to watch this tournament. I think they'll go through against Bosnia. I actually said at the start to they'll go through the quarterfinals. I've got Mexico in the last 16. I think they might come up stuck against England, but I wouldn't mind that prediction being wrong, obviously.
I was just seeing USA's game there. I mean, they've got Bosnia in the round of 32, and I think USA will win that.
Yes,
I think USA will win that, and then I've seen if they win that,
the Belgium and Senegal, the winner of that they would get. And I fancy the USA against Ireland, to be honest.
Yeah, Belgium are just they've been underwhelming for tournaments for ages now. I think the last tournament you could say they were all right at or expected, a lot was maybe the Brazil World Cup, maybe 2014. But they've been underwhelming in every tournament since. They've not been great. I think if USA
2018 when they got to the semi-final, they beat Brazil in the way, maybe.
Yeah. But it's USA. I think you look at the path they've got. You could fancy them to beat Bosnia easily, and you could say they could beat Belgium or Senegal.
Yes, and Spain and get popped out.
Yeah. I think that's what I said. When they come up against a Spain or something, you expect Spain or a giant to cause them bother. But yeah, that Mexico-Ecuador game will be very interesting. And that's as you said, it's on the path, same path as England, as well. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think Wales fans will look at that Bosnia and thinking what might have been had they done their job, because that was a gettable group. Because Bosnia for me are not a great side. What I will say is they are quite they were well organised against Canada, but Switzerland tore them apart once they got their rhythm going, and then they played Qatar in the last game, and I still don't get how Qatar got a point against Switzerland. Switzerland missed a lot of big chances, but hey ho, that's just my thoughts.
All right, any last words on the World Cup, guys?
Yeah, I've not got anything. I don't know about yourselves. I'm okay with that.
It's been enjoyable. I must say there was a couple of days where I didn't even watch highlights because I was just too scunnered after the Scotland result, to be perfectly honest. But no, I think most of the games have been good, and whatever we think about the politics of America, I don't think we hold a high regard for them, and some of the pricing's been awful, but they are a good host nation, to be fair, and there's lots of great stadiums, and they know how to put in a spectacle. And it's just a shame that all the politics have come with it to dampen it a wee bit. But no, on the pitch, it's been a good tournament so far.
Yeah.
Along with that continue. Well, and now the end is near, and so we face the final curtain. Thankfully, I'm not going to sing. As you'll all be glad to know. As this is the last ever SFF podcast, I don't think we can finish up without some final thoughts about the podcast as a whole. So I'll start with Daris, because you're relatively new to the podcast, joining us just this season. What's your thoughts on how it's been?
It's been absolutely fantastic, guys. Big thank you to Josh as well that, helped me get onto the podcast, made me feel welcome right away, and, settling in to the chat and, making some friends through the chat. I've met some of you guys as well from the Scotland games, and it's been absolutely fantastic. Even though I've only been on since October, it's been some really good talking points, whether it's been from Scotland games, whether it's been from the SPFL Premiership, whether it's lower league football, and just good to chat in general. And I feel like it's more than just a podcast for me. I've met some really good pals from it as well, met some really good mates, and it's been an honour to be on board. And as I said, thank you very much for everything that you have done for me since when I've been on since October. So I greatly appreciate it.
It's definitely been an honour for us as well, Daris. And then, of course, I'm going to come to John, someone who's been on this podcast for about a decade now. Sum up what this means to you and what some of your favourite moments have been.
Favourite moments? There's a podcast in itself for that, is there not? It's been interesting. Some of the titles have certainly been interesting. Like the Kelly Brook after the Scottish Cup Elsie and Aberdeen Celtic. And do you know what? Even though that was a low weekend because Aberdeen lost the Scottish Cup final to a certain Tom Rogic there, I can say his name again. I actually really enjoyed that podcast being on. So that was really good. But we've had the COVID was in a strange way good for us because it meant people were able to come on with some terrific guests during that period. I know who one of your favourite guests is going to be. There's too many to mention. But the fact that Scotland have qualified for the World Cup I just couldn't help but kick the arse out of the previews. You know, I think I hosted 12 previews, you know, specials, and just got some terrific guests like this, Grant Stott and the obviously Morris Malpass from a player's perspective, getting Adam on from you know, from Boston, Derek Ray being on straight after the draw as well. I mean, that was terrific. I think that was our most listened to. But I think
by some way,
yeah. But I think just in general, the best thing is meeting is the people that we've met, and obviously, Krys, we've met in a social capacity recently at the quiz as well. You know, we've had some great friendships formed over this time, and we've got a strong group chat that hopefully that will keep going. And yeah, we just continue to keep talking crap about the game that they love.
Yeah, I'm assuming you're talking about John Hughes. That's the podcast you're referring to. Yeah. Specific. Yeah, that was one of many very good interviews that we did over COVID. It probably got us through COVID, let's face it. It would have been a lonely time otherwise, but we had the podcast to go, so that was yeah,
really exactly. We need to give a shout out. One guest, former guest, that we need to give a shout out because he actually stayed with a member of the team for quite a while doing the predictions. Ali Graham, what an absolute gem of a guy. He kept the so we did the lower league predictions, and he kept kicking our arse most of the time. But
he destroyed us this season. It was done about 6 or 7, 8 weeks to go.
Yeah. But he's always been good, Ali, and some of the stories that he tells is terrific. So, and whenever we wanted him on, he was willing to help. So, yeah, big shout out to Ali Graham. On the recording of what's his wedding anniversary, I saw that on his Facebook earlier, because I don't do Twitter anymore.
Yeah, so we've had some amazing people involved over the years. For me, it's been an astounding 15 years, not least because Celtic won the league 14 of those. Damn you, COVID. I've met some wonderful people along the way. We've had some great nights together, whether it's been on here or nights out, discussing some amazing moments in history. I think the first podcast we did was the 2011-12 season, which ended with a financial imploding of one of Scotland's big two. So it's kind of just taken off from there. But when you think back to where Scotland were back in 2011, under the likes of Craig Levine and where we are now, it's just night and day. It's been great to go along that ride. We've interviewed some amazing guests I never thought I'd get to speak to, but like John Hughes was an epic, where we just asked him a question and let him talk for 10 minutes. Derek Ray has been on this podcast several times. I was there the first time he was on, and I was just gobsmacked. I really appreciated the way Craig ran that podcast that night, because he ran it like a normal podcast instead of interviewing him. And the difference between our knowledge and Derek's knowledge was just, it was amazing. It was just, you were in awe of the guy the entire time. So it was an absolute privilege. I've really enjoyed building up the nice little community. Daris touched on that. But I think mostly I'm going to be glad I don't need to mess around with YouTube settings or open Audacity or log into Twitter ever again. No, seriously, it's been an absolute pleasure and an honour to do this podcast alongside so many great people who all care about Scottish football in their own way. We don't always agree, and that's as it should be. We have different teams, different perspectives, but we've respected each other along the way, and it's been fantastic. So all that's left for me to say to all the listeners and contributors across the last 15 years is I'd like to say thank you on behalf of the group and ourselves, and I hope we've passed the audition. Thanks, John Lennon. However, it seems only fitting that we hear from a few more voices from the past, former stalwarts of the podcast that have helped get us through the decade and a half of Scottish football. So I'll throw now to a collection of my SFF podcast colleagues from across the seasons. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye, Scotland.
Hi, everyone. Charlie from the podcast here. Was gutted not to be able to make it on to the podcast last night, and was just a bit under the weather. However, Krys has asked me to send in a voice note. Obviously, the podcast is wrapping up, which is really sad. I've really enjoyed the last 2.5 years, I would say, being on the podcast as a regular. And sad that it's finishing. Just really enjoyed getting to chat to different people about football, and all the guests we've had on, whether that be music ones or people in football. It's just been really great. Really enjoyed it, and it's a shame that we're coming to a close. Have really been lucky to meet everyone involved in the podcast, friends for life. And yeah, looking forward to keeping in touch with them even after the podcast finishes. So yeah, thanks to everyone for listening over the last 15 years at least. And I'm really sad that this is the last time that I'll be on a podcast on the SFF banner. But yeah, just thanks everyone for your support, and cheers again.
Hello, listeners of the Scottish Football Forums podcast. It's Erin here, the ever-optimistic Aberdeen fan. I just want to say thanks to listeners, guests, co-hosts, particularly Krys for putting together all of the technical stuff. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed reasonably interesting podcast with some very good stats in there, a couple of little jokes along the way. It's been great fun, made lots of brilliant friends, and very lucky to have so many people to chat about football with, particularly how well Aberdeen are going to do this season.
For me, the Scottish Football Forums podcast has become a bit of a staple in my week. And that's as a contributor, let alone a fan. Of course, I got involved towards the end of season 12, when, of course, previous host JB asked me to get involved in one of the end of season review shows. And those end of season review shows, and the ones at the start of every season, always will live long in the memory. And long is a key word, because they were always like 4-hour specials. You basically locked in for a night, got some food beside you, got a refreshment of some sort, and you're locked in. And you always had great times kind of getting to know other fans, bouncing off other team supporters. Like, say, when the top and bottom six weren't split, you would have, Hearts and Hibs fans battling out with one another, or maybe, I don't know, what's the closest we've got? A Kelly fan in my case, and I don't know, a St Mirren fan. But you got that bit of interaction, and that's something that a lot of podcasts miss. Because lots of pods focus on the big two. And we give the big two their credit. We do. We're fair, we're balanced. But that's the difference. At SFF, we've always focused on those untold stories and some of those untapped markets, be it non-league, which I know isn't one of my friends, but it's one of the podcast friends generally. Be it even the link between football and music, and of course I've been involved in a few of the football music specials, including one with PG Charletta, for example, or even one with Jamie from The Rampant, of course, local Ayrshire band, and stuff like that is brilliant. But one of my favourite memories and moments on the podcast is actually getting the opportunity, alongside Charlie, of course, another regular, to interview Mixu Patalainen, who is, of course, former Kilmarnock manager, former Hibs manager, former player for various Scottish clubs as well. And to listen to someone like that and to get the opportunity to speak with someone like that is something that will always kind of live long in my memory as well. And I'm saying that as that was the last podcast that I was actually part of, in terms of actually on air as such, because a matter of days after that is when I've got myself into a recent predicament of quite serious knee injuries. I'm talking like a footballer now, but I think the overarching thing for me on SFF, very personally, it has helped me in terms of in the podcasting game and just generally get more well known within Scottish football. It makes you so much better connected. I'm saying that as a journalist to be, who's just due to graduate from UWS. But honestly, SFF will be missed. And at the end of the day, we are the home of Scottish football banter for a reason. And ultimately, we have made a difference in that podcast scene. We know we have. And this is not the end for a lot of us. And it's not the end for SFF legacy. And overall, there's two words that are important: Happy football.
RIP SFF. Highlight has to be over the years the big fat SFF quiz of the year at Christmas time, where there was so much cheating going on, so many ridiculous quiz questions. Such a laugh with the troops, and sadly, gonna miss it. RIP SFF Podcast.
Oh man, the SFF coming to an end. I mean, what a sad day. But what great times we've had. Gutted that personally I've not been like circumstances, like stuff I get paid for, has prevented me from being as involved as I'd wanted to be in the past probably 6 months or so. But I mean, just it's we had some laughs, we had some great episodes, some absolute capers. But it's the people in it, and that's what I remember from doing SFF. It's it's the people that I've met, friends for life really, from it, people I wouldn't have met otherwise, laughs I wouldn't have had, the days out were good, all that. But you know what, we always enjoyed the football, we always enjoyed the chat about that, and did some great stuff with that. But yeah, I mean, so many folk that we've just met through this that were that are just absolutely golden. Great characters, great people, lovely people. Don't really have many or any. We've never had many or any arseholes involved, which probably says it all about the quality of, about what the SFF was all about. So I'll miss it. I loved it. But hey, these things happen in life. As I've sort of discovered in the last 6 months, sometimes things get in the way of the fun, and priorities have to take over. But yeah, all the very best to everyone. All the biggest thanks to everyone who's listened. And keep in touch with us all on the socials and stuff like that, because we would miss that. Okay, right, big love, Danny.
Hi everyone, JB here, F-Bomb John, Vietnam John. Had quite a few nicknames over the years, so I can't believe that it's the last episode of Scottish Football Forums podcast. Totally enjoyed my time doing it from season 1 when I was a guest, and I remember thinking this is quite cool to think I'm on iTunes, and 15 years down the line we've achieved a lot. I did leave early in the season, but made many friends like Krys and John. We were allowed to take the podcast on when Craig, the original host of the forum, left, and I felt quite privileged. I think I hosted it for about 10 years. So many great experiences in terms of, like, the highlight was definitely being to the Euros, which is something I never thought I would get to do, and managed to spend time with John and Josh and other guests that we've had on. Just a fantastic time to actually cover the Euros and record a podcast in Germany was pretty cool. Managed to interview or talk to heroes that I had grown up, like footballers or people, and such a great time. Hopefully everyone that listened enjoyed it, and thank you to anyone that liked it, shared it, listened, came on as a guest. Always be thankful for doing this podcast, and now I do a different podcast if you want to check it out. Thank you everyone, take care, and I hope everyone really enjoys the last episode with the guys. Cheers.
I was very honoured to be asked to be the very first guest on Scottish Football Forums podcast way back when, and I was delighted to accept Craig's invitation, and I really enjoyed spending that time talking to Craig and Laurie. Then, a few years later, I was asked to become a regular after COVID, with John and John, who both worked tirelessly and passionately with the podcast, and it was great just to kind of chat about Scottish football. And, you know, I hadn't done a podcast in a while, and they both made me feel very welcome. I should get a special mention to Krys. There's not many people out there that I've had as enjoyable conversations about football as I did with Krys. He did get the Brendan Rodgers, Neil Lennon debate spectacularly wrong, but we'll let him off. I'll never mention it again after this. So yeah, I think I would like to just say that it was an honour and a privilege to go into any podcast that I did with the Scottish Football Forums. It was always a great time, great laugh, full of kind of topics and controversies of Scottish football, but we would all get on and talk about it and have a laugh. So all in all, I had wonderful memories, and the podcast gave a lot of people a platform to get into Scottish football as a job, whether it be with clubs or with the media, and I think it'll be sorely missed.
Evening all, Greg here, aka One Man Clapping for all you Scottish Football Forum disciples. Well, what a sad day, the end of an era. I can't quite believe the podcast is coming to the end of the road. I think I started contributing, and I use that term loosely, to the podcast maybe back in 2013, which feels like a long, long time ago. It was Monday nights sitting at the kitchen table with the headphones on and the laptop, having just hurriedly watched the sports scene highlights from the weekend. Each week chatting about a load of nonsense, often nothing to do with the football, which is maybe one of the reasons for the podcast's early success. SFF Podcast might not have been the first, but it was certainly one of the earliest forms of digital fan content. Everybody and their dog's got a podcast or a YouTube channel these days, but the SSF Pod was genuinely ahead of its time. Now, although my involvement in the pod finished probably 10 years or so ago now, it's been brilliant to see it continue to grow, thanks mainly to John's and Krys. I mean, we never really get the listener base into millions. I'm sure there are a core band of dedicated listeners who will miss the content. Now, as a wee bit of prep for this, I asked ChatGPT to tell me a bit about the podcast. So, under the heading Content and Tone, it says, Vibe, the show leans heavily into casual fan culture, featuring authentic, unpolished, I can say that again, debate and classic football banter. I thought I'd ask it to tell me who the original core members were, and rightly it mentions Craig and Laurie as the founding duo. And then it's saying early pioneers being listed as John B and Krys. So Craig, Laurie, John B and Krys. Wait a minute. Someone else surely missing here. I'll scroll down a wee bit. Okay, it's listing the other cast members now. So Cammy, Alan, Charlie, Graham, Josh. Who the fuck is Josh? Darius and Stephen, and that's it. Nah, surely a mistake here. It would appear I've been erased from the history books of the SFF podcast. I feel like the Andrew Mountbatten of the podcast game here. So aye, good enough to ask for a soundbite when the podcast's done, but not good enough to merit a mention. Well, here's your soundbite. You can stick your podcast up your arse. I'm glad it's done. Anyway, all the best, lads, and well done in 15 years of nonsense, laughs, and a wee bit of football chucked in there too. Interestingly, ChatGPT also asked me if I'd like to quote, provide a summary of Craig's best bits. So I've said yes, but that was about 15 minutes ago and it's come up with nothing yet. Take care, boys. And if you see Craig, tell him I'm looking for him. He owes me a £5.
Hey, this is Laurie, one of the first members of the Scottish Football Forums podcast, way back in 2011 when we first started the show, which was initially just Craig and myself. It feels like a lifetime ago, but I still fondly remember Craig's dry hello to open every episode and the interruptions from Wendy the cat. The podcast grew. Krys, JB, Greg, Scott, many others. It was actually before podcasts were cool. And to be fair, we weren't very cool. But we had fun. And it clearly worked, given it kept going for 15 years. We even did a Christmas song one year. Now someone needs to dig that out before you sign off. So thanks for the memories. What a great run. Sorry to see you go.
Hello, Craig here. For those that have got a really, really long memory, you might remember me from being a host way back day one and for quite a few years before I had to step away for personal reasons. Thanks to Krys for inviting me back on for this special last episode of the podcast. It gave me a chance to reminisce about the good old days, how I used to sit in my kitchen and drink far too many cans of beer and talk football and nonsense with my pals online. It's really, really good times, and yeah, I'm really, really proud of how the podcast has gone on from strength to strength after I left. I'm sure it's no coincidence that happened, because I was surrounded by people who were really, really knowledgeable about football, whereas I was maybe there for a wee bit of a laugh, a wee bit of a joke. I took a moment to think about some of the highlights of my time doing the podcast, and I can't get away from the fact that we had Derek Ray on. I remember he gave me his mobile number after I reached out to him, and I phoned him, and he was making soup in his kitchen, and I don't know why, but it was a pinch myself moment where I was thinking, wait a minute, we're talking about him coming on the Scottish Football Forums podcast. This is Derek Ray off the telly. That was one positive highlight. Another maybe more funny highlight was the reviews I used to get in. Reviews such as, it's not getting any better, you might as well give up. Or there was one guy that said that he listened to it while he was in bed so he could get to sleep because my voice was so boring. But that's alright, I do have a boring voice. That's fine, you just need to accept that. So yeah, thanks to the lads for everything they've done over the years. I really appreciate it, and good luck with whatever comes next. Thanks, bye.